As US inflation hit its highest point in 4 decades, New Zealand's Reserve Bank has surprised markets by raising its cash rate by 0.5% to 1.5%. Let's get the latest with Ross Greenwood now, our business editor. Ross, how much pressure does this put on our central bank right in the middle of the election campaign?
Well, it really just has to, because the real feeling is now that the Reserve Bank in Australia is effectively behind the curve and it's going to have to play catch up at some stage. Now, the Reserve Bank here has always and consistently said it was going to wait until it sees wages inflation take off and actual inflation, underlying inflation, also rise. But the evidence we're seeing from New Zealand, and Australia is not that much different, it is different, but it's not that much different, is really the pressure is building. And if they're waiting for the election campaign to end, then really, in many ways, they're going to have to play catch up. I just want to give you one statement that the Reserve Bank of New Zealand came out with today. Pretty important, and that is that they expect the annual consumer price inflation to peak around 7% in the first half of this year. Remember, inflation here in Australia at the moment officially 3.5%. It says the risk of more persistent high inflation expectations has increased. In other words, it's not the end of the rate rises there. So I want to show you what's happened as compared with Australia and New Zealand since last year. So if we go back to August last year, both at emergency lows, the New Zealand Central Bank at 0.25%, us at 0.1%. But then have a look what happens. From August until today, they've raised interest rates from 0.25% to 1.5%. Our interest rates here have not moved. And so this is one of the points where, again, the Reserve Bank here says somehow Australia is different, but the evidence is mounting that Australia is not different, that the inflation is taking off, it's coming through our economy, and as a result, ultimately, the Reserve Bank here needs to act and needs to act fairly quickly.
And talk us through how it does correlate with the US. Last night it saw its annual inflation at 8.5. Markets pretty clear that the Fed is going to raise rates by 0.5% when it meets in about 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, that's right. And so the interesting part about that is you've heard the New Zealand story. The story is similar in Singapore. The story is similar in London. The story is also very apparently similar in the United States. And again here, I just want to show you the overall inflation rate annually is 8.5%. But have a look at these price rises in the past 12 months. Petrol prices up 48%, used car prices 35%, although in the last month they have actually gone backwards. Gas prices, that's for household gas, up by 21%, electricity 11%, food 10%, all these things rising during that period of time. Now, the interesting part about this is that President Joe Biden tried to slate this back to Vladimir Putin and the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, but it's fair to say that that inflation was already there before, of course, the invasion. But have a listen to what Joe Biden said last night.
I'm doing everything within my power by executive orders to bring down the price and address the Putin price hike. In fact, we've already made progress since March inflation data was collected. Your family budget, your ability to fill up your tank, none of it should hinge on whether a dictator declares war and commits genocide in half a world away.
As I say, the inflation was there even before Russia invaded Ukraine. As you point out, Kieran, the US is expected to raise interest rates in May by 0.5%. That's what the money markets are now universally saying. Now, curiously, here in Australia, the Reserve Bank on the first Tuesday in May would otherwise be expected to be raising rates. The question is, during an election campaign, are they prepared to do that, or will they wait, as most analysts say, until June and after the election?
It's a very interesting question, isn't it? Because it's not like we haven't seen the RBA move before during an election. Ross, thank you. Appreciate that.